Hey everybody, welcome to this no line Ohuhu and Polychromo coloring of rose. We're doing no line coloring and we're starting with our skin tone, which is our R26, R29, and R18. We're going to be working from our darkest color, being our R26, to our lightest color, which will be our R18. So to prepare this image, I did stamp it with Memento ink in Desert Sand to get our no line effect. When you're coloring with your Ohuhu markers and doing a skin tone, it's very important that you make sure you blend the colors in very well. You can see here, I'm just touching up around the eyes with a colorless blender where I got a little bit inside where I didn't want to. Also, don't forget the hand. Next up, we're going to be coloring the tongue using R27 and R30 and just keeping the darker color to the edges of the mouth and then outlining her lip mouth with the R27. Her dress is going to be R8, R6, R4, R1, G240, and G220. Again, we're going to be starting with our darker color, which is our R8, and I'm going to be keeping that to the right hand side where I want it darkest on her dress. I'm going to just add in her waistband and into her collar with my greens that I wanted to use, which was my G240, and then lightening it up with G220. Then I go back in with my R6, which is my next color, and then I'm going to progressively move that color darker to lighter with my darkest tone, and then moving to my lightest tone. So it would be R4 that is next, and then I'll finish with my R1. When doing a no-line coloring, it's helpful to have the image referenced with it stamped out or the black outline. So we're going to go in with some details using a microfine black pen. I'm using the Faber-Castell Pit Artist pen in black. You can use whatever pen you'd like. And I'm just adding some detail lines, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to also add in her buttons as well that were not showing up with that no line stamp, with that desert sand, so we want to put those details back in. And when I did stamp her, I did use black around the eye. Now for her blouse, I used E220 and I just colored that in really quickly. For her shoes, I used E050 and E380. Her hair is a combination of Y12, E170, and E240. And first I'm using the Y12 just to outline the lines that have been drawn in already for us. Then I'm going from my darker or mid-tone to my lighter tone color. And I'm just adding in a little bit more lines with that Y12. Next up, we're going to be coloring her hat, and that's going to be the same colors we use in her dress, which is that G240 and that G220. And again, we're going to be starting with our darker color and where we want it to be darkest and deepest in the hat, and then moving to our lighter color. We're trying out a little bit of a new video format here for you, so I hope you enjoy it. Make sure you let me know in the comments what you think of how this video is compared to our other videos. And remember, it's all about being patient and blending. Now going back in, and I'm adding a little bit more of that dark detail. And when you want a color to appear darker, you can go over it a few times and it will deepen the color the more you go over it. Next up is her bow, and I'm just going to be using 3 of the reds, R8, R6, and R1, starting again with my deepest red, which is the R8, then moving on to my R6, and then my R1. When doing no line coloring, it is important to use your darker color usually on where your outline or where your stamp line would have been. I really love no line coloring. How about you? Let me know in the comments. Next up is our umbrella, and we're just using YG080 and YG040. So I'm just coloring that in, and then I'm going to do some details on the rest of my image now with another, just that microfine black pen, or whatever pen you feel works best for you. And you want to make sure that you do some of those outlines sparingly, because remember, this is a no line coloring, so you're just really adding it for a little bit of detailed shadow and just to bring out some of those details that may have been lost. So again, this is going to be a combination video where we're using Ohuhus, but also we're going to be using our Faber-Castell Polychromos. So now that's what we're going to start. So we're going to start with our magenta 133, and that's where we're going to add some deeper color into the stress. Now, of course, you could just use your alcohol markers and leave it at that, but when I'm doing no line, I like to add a little bit more detail. My next color up is going to be my deep scarlet red, which is 219. So we're moving from magenta to our deep scarlet red. And again, we're just adding a little bit more color and a little bit more depth to our image. And then finally with our reds, we're using Pale Geranium Lake. And that is 121. And then we're using our earth green yellowish 168 on her hat to deepen that up. You want to just use it where you're going to see a little bit more depth and shadow. Finally, we're going to use some white 101 just on some areas where you want to lighten it up with some highlight. And then you're going to smooth and blend this out using a blending stump. So that kind of just melds those colored pencil colors together and smooths them out a little bit so they're not so harsh. Now in the umbrella, we're going to be using Emerald Green 163. And then to give a little bit more shadow, we're using Schwartz Black 199 in some of those deeper shadowed areas. Again, just to give this image a little bit more life. Now we're going to be using the Earth Green Yellowish 168 again, just to give her a little bit of an eyeshadow look in there. Then we're going to be doing her lip with a Pale Geranium Lake 121. And we're just making a little cupid's bow right above her lip and a little bit more outline. Now for her nose, we just use a little of that Burnt Ochre 187. And in her cheeks, we're going to use that Pale Geranium Lake again. And we're going to blend that out with a blending stump and a little bit of white. Then finally, we're going to use our white Posca pen to add some highlights throughout this image. And just give it a few little bit of pizzazz this way. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial coloring rose, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Thanks a lot.